For many, Christmas is the most wonderful time of the year, a time for giving, celebration, and reflecting on what we're grateful for. For others, however, Christmas is the worst time of the year, with the festive season driving them to commit some of the worst acts imaginable. Today, we are taking a look at some of the most shocking Christmas crimes ever recorded. Number 8, Christmas tree murder. In December 2011, Michelle O'Dowd, a 67-year-old woman from Jacksonville, Florida, was brutally murdered in her home by Patty Michelle White, a 41-year-old woman who had befriended her. The crime occurred after the two women's friendship soured. White, who had access to O'Dowd's home, beat and strangled her, then staged the scene to look like a burglary by covering the body with Christmas presents. O'Dowd's twin brother, Phil Axt, discovered her body when he went to check on her after she failed to show up for work. Upon entering the house, he found it ransacked, with furniture overturned and O'Dowd's car and dog still inside. He found her body with her bloody face covered by a towel, hidden beneath a pile of Christmas gifts meant for family members. White, who had stolen O'Dowd's debit and credit cards, fled to South Carolina. After using the cards at ATMs, she was arrested and extradited to Florida to face charges. In a plea deal, White pled guilty to second-degree murder and was sentenced to 45 years in prison, avoiding a life sentence. Number 7, Australian meth murder. On Christmas Day 2013, William Bill Stevenson from Kerrang, Victoria, was brutally murdered by his friends, meth addicts Danielle Kerr and Darren Lewis. After getting high on the drug, Kerr and Lewis took Stevenson into the Australia bush, where Kerr attacked him with a rock and a knife, stabbing him multiple times while taunting him with cries of, "Die, die." Stevenson begged for his life, but Kerr continued the savage assault. A proper motive has never been established for the murder, with the 37-year-old telling her co-conspirator that there was a movie named Kill Bill and that she wanted to know what it would feel like. After the murder, the pair set Stevenson's car on fire before walking away from the scene. Both Kerr and Lewis were arrested shortly afterward. Kerr received a 21-year prison sentence, while Lewis was sentenced to 10 years for his involvement. Number 6, the Christmas killing spree. In 1987, retired serviceman Ronald Simmons carried out one of the deadliest Christmas killing sprees in history. The reason for his rampage will shock you. The 47-year-old lived in Arkansas with a large family, but instead of planning to celebrate Christmas, Simmons had been planning something far darker. On the 22nd of December, Simmons killed his wife Rebecca and eldest son Gene by bludgeoning them with a crowbar and shooting them with a .22 caliber pistol. He then killed his 3-year-old granddaughter Barbara by strangulation before dumping the bodies into a cesspit. Simmons then waited for his other children to return from school. Upon their arrival, he told them he had presents for them but wanted to give them one at a time. He first killed his daughter, 17-year-old Loretta, whom he drowned in a rain barrel. The 3 other children, Eddie, Marianne, and Becky, were then killed in the same way and subsequently dumped in the cesspit. Around midday on December 26th, the remaining family members arrived at the home as Simmons had invited them over for the holidays. The first to be killed was Simmons' son Billy and his wife Renata, who were both shot dead. He then strangled and drowned their 20-month-old son, Trey. Simmons also shot and killed his oldest daughter, Sheila, and her husband, Dennis McNulty. Simmons had sexually abused Sheila throughout her life and also murdered the 7-year-old daughter he had fathered by her, before finally killing his 21-month-old grandson, Michael. After the murders, Simmons drove to a Sears store in Russellville, where he retrieved Christmas gifts that he had previously ordered for his family. That night, he went for a drink at a local bar before returning home, where he spent the rest of the evening drinking beer and watching television. On the morning of December 28th, Simmons drove to a Walmart to purchase another firearm for the last stage of his Christmas rampage. His first target was a law firm where he had previously met Secretary Kathy Kendrick, a woman who he had been infatuated with but had rejected him. He shot and killed her before heading to an oil company office where he intended to kill the owner. The businessman was also the owner of the Sinclair Mini Mart, from which Simmons had recently resigned. He shot and wounded his former boss before killing a stranger in the building and wounding another. Simmons then drove on to Sinclair Mini Mart, shooting and wounding 2 more people. His final target was the office of the Woodline Motor Freight Company, where he shot his former supervisor twice, wounding her. He then ordered one of the employees at gunpoint to call the police. When they arrived, Simmons handed over his gun and surrendered without any resistance. In total, Simmons killed 16 people in the space of 6 days. He was sentenced to death and executed in June 1990. Number 5. Festive witchcraft. On Christmas Day 2010, 15-year-old Christy Bamu was tortured and drowned by his sister and her boyfriend in Newham, London. For 4 days, the pair had tortured the teen, inflicting up to 130 separate injuries before killing him. Christy had been visiting his sister in London from his home in Paris for Christmas with his siblings. All the children were beaten by the couple after their sister's husband, Eric Bakubi, accused them of carrying out witchcraft in his home. He even forced the children to get involved with the beatings and made them jump out of a window to see if they could fly. Christy was reportedly singled out after wetting his pants, with the abuse becoming focused on him. His sister Magali also participated in the abuse. Christy was beaten with various objects, including metal bars and a hammer, suffering severe injuries. He was ultimately drowned in a bathtub on Christmas Day. In 2012, both Eric Bakubi and Magali Bamu were convicted of murder. Bakubi was sentenced to a minimum of 30 years in prison, and Bamu to at least 25 years. Number 4, the murder of Joanna Yates. On December 17, 2010, 25-year-old Joanna Yates went missing from the flat she shared with her partner in Bristol, England, after a night out with work colleagues. Her disappearance triggered a massive investigation, which led to the discovery of her body on Christmas Day, around 5 miles from her home. A post-mortem examination determined that she had been strangled. The investigation dominated UK news during the Christmas period, with her family appealing for public help through social media and press conferences. Rewards totaling £60,000 were offered for information. Police initially arrested her landlord, Christopher Jeffries, who lived in the same building, but he was released without charge and unfairly vilified by the press. Vincent Tabak, a 32-year-old Dutch architectural engineer and resident of another flat in the building, was arrested on January 2011. His arrest coincided with media focus on a Crime Watch reenactment of Yates's disappearance. After 2 days of questioning, Tabak was charged with her murder on January 22nd. He later admitted to manslaughter but denied murder. Following a trial that began on October 4th, he was found guilty of murder on October 28th and sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 20 years. After being wrongly accused and vilified in the press, Christopher Jeffries, Joanna Yates's landlord, pursued libel actions against several newspapers and received substantial damages. The publications had portrayed him in a negative and sensationalized manner during the early stages of the investigation, despite his release without charge. Number 3, the Ohio Christmas killing spree. In 1992, a wave of shocking crimes rocked a small Ohio town over the Christmas period. 4 youths, aged just 16 to 20, spent 3 days terrorizing Dayton, Ohio, leaving 6 people dead and 2 others seriously injured. Known as the Downtown Posse, the group began their spree when Laura Taylor and Heather Matthews lured Joseph Wilkerson to his home under false pretenses, where he was tied to his bed and shot. The girls were later joined by Marvelous Keene and DeMarcus Smith, who spent the next few days partying inside his house with his body between killings. They next robbed 18-year-old Danita Gillette, a teenage mother who was using a payphone when approached by the gang. Despite her compliance, they shot and killed her anyway. The group next murdered Laura Taylor's ex-boyfriend on Christmas Day, before shooting another man 4 times who managed to survive. The gang then robbed a mini-mart on Boxing Day, killing 38-year-old Sarah Abraham and shooting another customer before fleeing. A third employee evaded harm by pretending to be dead. Keene, who was allegedly the group's leader, later became paranoid that associates would snitch. In order to prevent this, the Downtown Posse hunted down Wendy Cottrell and Marvin Washington before executing them in a gravel pit. The spree ended on December 26th when police, acting on tips and evidence, arrested the group. Marvelous Keene was identified as the ringleader and confessed to the murders. He was convicted and sentenced to death, while the others received lengthy prison sentences. Keene was executed by lethal injection on July 21st, 2009, at the Southern Ohio Correctional Facility. His final meal was an enormous feast of a steak, a pound of prawns with cocktail sauce, fries and onion rings, bread and butter, 2 plums, a mango, a pound of grapes, German chocolate cake, 2 bottles of Pepsi, and 2 bottles of cream soda. Never offering a real explanation for the killing spree, his final statement was, "I have no words." Number 2, JonBenét Ramsey. Probably the most famous case on this list, the unsolved murder case of JonBenét Ramsey, remains a topic of discussion to this day. JonBenét Ramsey was an American child beauty queen who was killed at age 6 in her family's home in Boulder, Colorado, Colorado on Christmas Day in 1996. Her body was found in the house's basement about 7 hours after she had been reported missing. She had sustained a broken skull and a garrote was tied around her neck. Police initially believed that the murder was a kidnapping gone wrong after discovering a handwritten ransom note in the family home. They suspected that Patsy Ramsey had written the note and staged the scene, including JonBenét's body, to cover up the crime. However, investigations later found no solid evidence to confirm this theory. The discovery of an unknown male's DNA on JonBenét's clothing, which did not match any family members, pointed to an intruder. Over time, the investigation shifted focus, but the case remains unsolved, with various theories suggesting alternative suspects. The public scrutiny and media pressure have kept the case in the spotlight, but no charges have been brought against anyone. Number 1, the gift of death. On Christmas Day 2013, Melissa Young offered her 47-year-old neighbor, Alan Williamson, a Christmas gift of a new pair of sneakers and a calendar. However, much to her disappointment, her gifts were refused. In response, Young stabbed her neighbor 29 times, later claiming that she had been possessed by an angel who told her she had to defeat a demon living inside Williamson. Court documents revealed that Young had called emergency services while Williamson was still alive. He was recorded in the background of the call, pleading to be let out of her apartment. During the trial, Young was diagnosed with a mixed personality disorder and schizophrenia. Although Young initially pleaded guilty to culpable homicide, the court rejected this and convicted her of murder. Judge Lord Boyd noted that while Young had a severe personality disorder, it played no role in the crime, and she showed no remorse. That's it for today's episode. Let us know in the comments which of these stories you found the most shocking. Thanks for watching.